All aboard! Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, football fans of all ages, I am Beast Mike, and you've now arrived in my train of thought. It's time to talk about the power rankings, and I'm going to do this a little bit differently, as you've probably noticed that I've continued to change some things up every now and again. But this time I'm going to focus on public transit. As some of you may know, I am big on this. I actually enjoy public transit. I think that this country should absolutely have high-speed rail. If Japan and South Korea and China and the Middle East can form these types of rail systems, the U.S. could absolutely do it with the resources this country has. I just think they're kind of stubborn not to. In any event, my dad was a SEPTA driver in Philadelphia. He drove buses, he drove trains. I focus on trains because trains are my favorite mode of travel. And I'm going to honor 4 different rail systems. One not very great, one that's mediocre, one that's good, and one that I think is outstanding. And I'm going to talk about them as I go through the tiers. First, the RTC Zombie tier. The RTC is Las Vegas. They don't have trains. It's kind of a problem for someone who likes trains. Anyway, the teams in this tier are Carolina. Somehow worse. I didn't think it was possible because Carolina actually tried to revamp their roster. They tried to get Bryce Young some help. They tried to get him a coach that he can vibe with. They tried to get some receivers and the running game back and the defense. Yet they gave up almost half a hundo and New Orleans made it easy. It was 30-0 at halftime and the Saints could have put up 60 if they wanted to. Even worse, Derek Brown's out for the season probably, and that's their best player. They really are on 0-17 watch. There's a game later on this season that I'm going to talk about, unfortunately, and it's not going to be pretty. New York Giants. Ugly jerseys? Performance. So which was worse? The Montreal Canadiens style jerseys or the game they actually played in them? It was absolutely brutal. It was absolutely awful for the Giants alumni to see, and for them to get humiliated once again, and this time it's by the Vikings. It was painful. I do stick by the notion of this team should never be on prime time against the Cowboys until they beat Dallas. I also said this about Giants-Eagles, but the Giants beat the Eagles last year, so I will lift that ban. Tennessee, on bended knees. This is to reference the pick 6 that Will Levis threw. That was exactly awful. And he surrendered pretty much at that moment in time. The surrender cobra was 100% worthy. And Tennessee had no business losing this game, yet found a way to. That's a very awful loss for a team that I think can be decent and can still scare some teams. Will Levis scared his own team. Not great. New England won't go winless. I really thought it would be them, Carolina, and the Giants. One of those three have the real potential to go 0-17. But somehow, the Patriots won't be that team. They actually outplayed the Bengals. This was not a fluke what happened in Cincinnati on Sunday. They were better than Cincinnati. They made less mistakes. They were more efficient. Ramondre Stevenson was really good. And they earned that victory. Congrats to Jared Mayo for that. Las Vegas. Defense got bullied. This is something I was not expecting to see. Not with Max Crosby or Christian Wilkins and company on that defensive line. The Chargers bully them. And I think that's the style that the Chargers are going to have pretty much from here on, as long as Harbaugh is there. But this is exceptionally wild how this happened. Plus, Antonio Pierce's coaching style did not help the Raider cause. Punting in Charger territory while botching a 4th and 1 at your 40. It's just an awful display by Antonio Pierce. A guy I like, and I think he's going to get better, but that was pretty bad. Washington still got cooked. Well, the Commanders are going to have to go back to the drawing board with their defense. Maybe they just don't have the personnel. I do think they have the coaching. I do think they have the defensive line. But, yeah, that was pretty bad. That was pretty rough to get shredded by Baker Mayfield and company. And the more this happens, the more it feels like they miss Montez Sweat and Chase Young. Where's that pass rush? Denver. Rookie struggles. Yeah, we should have known about this when it comes to Bo Nix. Bo Nix kind of went to Auburn form. with the NOs and the bad decision making. He was not in his Oregon bag, and that's kind of unfortunate. Denver had 2 safeties in the span of a quarter, and maybe even the span of back-to-back drives, and somehow lost, and they were definitely not the better team in this game. No, and the run defense also got cooked by Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. That's also not great. And Cleveland. Worst fears realized. Yeah, I had Cleveland way too high. So if you remember the power rankings I did before the season, I had Cleveland 9th. Needless to say, they probably will not be anywhere close to that once the season, now that the season has started. That was as bad as it could have possibly gone for Deshaun Watson. And never mind the stuff off the field with the extra allegations in case that he may have to deal with. This has turned into a disaster class when it comes to this $230-some-odd million guaranteed contract. This defense is going to get wasted as long as Watson's the quarterback. Yikes. Now to the Miami Monkeys Paul tier. Now, I've been on these other 3 tiered train systems. I've been to Miami a few times. I love that city. I think that city is awesome. I think their train system's a bit mediocre. It's kind of unfortunate. I do love their monorail, though. Monorail's pretty dope. Arizona. No shame. That was a good game you guys played against the Bills. Yes, you blew the lead. Yes, it was a 2-score lead that you blew. Yes, Marvin Harrison would still be running had Kyler Murray seen him. Yes, the Cardinals are going to put fear into a lot of teams. They're going to learn how to lose these games and learn how to not lose these games this season, I think. And it feels like as long as they continue to revamp their roster, next year they're going to start winning these games. New York Jets, not as advertised. To me, it's as expected, but to a lot of people, this is not the New York Jet performance that they expected to see. This run defense got absolutely shredded, and it wasn't by Christian McCaffrey, which kind of makes this really bad. What makes this worse is that Aaron Rodgers kind of went dink and dunk for a lot of the game and kind of looked old. Then again, I kind of warned you guys about this. Also, tapping out with 6 minutes to go is kind of an awful look, and probably needs to get more attention than it already did. As a grand finale, Allen Lazard as the Jets' best receiver on Monday night was not on my bingo card. Minnesota, good or Giants? Minnesota looked functioning. They looked capable of doing stuff. I expected that from Aaron Jones and Justin Jefferson, but they actually look like a pretty respectable team. Now, the argument can be made that this was because the New York Giants exist, but the Vikings look pretty good. This week, I think will tell us more about what Minnesota truly is. Atlanta, still falconing. I said this team was the most frustrating team in the league last season, and they looked like they wanted to defend that title. That was brutal to watch. Kirk Cousins either A, looked unhealthy, or B, he just didn't have it or may not have it anymore. I don't know how to explain this. It was awful pretty much from the word go. And Ray-Ray McCloud as the Falcons' #1 receiver on Sunday was also not in the bingo card. You scored 1 touchdown, the Steelers scored 0, and Pittsburgh beat you by 8. That math is not mathing, unless you're talking about Chris Boswell. New Orleans, good or Panthers? Yeah, same question when it comes to you guys and the Vikings. Are you guys turning a corner, or are you guys just the beneficiary of running into the Carolina Panthers and how awful they are? Alvin Kamara did look good. Chris Olave, for some reason, wasn't really around, but Rashid Shaheed catching a home run touchdown pass, I think, is never a bad thing. He may help the fantasy team out, and I'll explain that later. Anyway, we're going to learn a good deal about New Orleans when they face the Cowboys this week. LA Chargers, worm turners. I'm not sure what this whole turning the worm thing is. I don't know what the Chargers are doing. Then again, Jim Harbaugh is very weird. I think it was the Michigan Air that did it to him. But anyway, we ain't talking about that right now. What we are talking about is how the Chargers are kind of turning their culture around with Jim Harbaugh. They look like a very physical, beat you up, and grind the game out type of team who happens to have a quarterback that, when in doubt, let Herbert do what he needs to do to take care of business. Lil Mac terrorizing the Raiders is par for the course. Also, Joey Bosa handling business and being healthy. is a good thing to see for Charger fans, all three of them. Anyway, that was a good win for LA. What they do with it from here, we'll see. Chicago, refusing to change. How many decades have gone by where the Bears' modus operandi of winning games is generally their defense, making splash plays, and terrible QB play with a potential running game being decent? That's effectively what happened here. Now, I would imagine this will change with Caleb Williams handling business eventually. But for now, to see that the Bears stole this game against the Titans without Caleb Williams really doing anything, it's a little disappointing to see that, but hey, the Bears will take it. And Jacksonville. Yep, still mid. Yeah, they're still mediocre. They still feel like a 7-10, 8-9-ish team. That was a pretty awful second half performance in Miami. And for the game to change instantly on the ETN fumble and then Tyreek Hill 80-yard touchdown in back-to-back plays, that 14-point swing took the game from over, where Jacksonville is up 24-7 and the game is probably done, to, oh, it's a one-score game and Miami only down 17-14 and has all the momentum. No, I don't know what Doug Peterson was thinking on that 4th and 1 where Travis Etienne had no shot at getting that first down. Jacksonville did kind of deserve to lose with how they played in the second half, to be honest. Now to the New York playoff tier, and let it be known, this has nothing to do with the Giants or Jets, because I don't think either of those teams are getting close to the playoffs. This is about the New York subway system itself. I think it's awesome. I think it's efficient. The problem is it's just not clean, and that's not great. Anyway, what is good, I think, is Cincinnati. Deja vu. Okay, we probably shouldn't have expected the Bengals to lose to New England. But for the Bengals to be sluggish, we probably should have expected that. That's kind of who they are and who they've always been in the Joe Burrow era. They start slow and then get rolling as the season goes along. But this looked bad. They don't have a Tyler Boyd to help bail them out. They don't have a Joe Mixon to help bail them out. They kind of have Jamar Chase, and allegedly will have T. Higgins later, but I don't know if the latter will be the case. He didn't play in last Sunday's game, and he might not play in the Chiefs game. The Bengals may be in more trouble than we really wanted to believe they were in. Indianapolis, you'll be okay. To be honest, the Colts played a really good game. There's no shame in how they played. They just ran into a slightly better team who basically won the lottery with their 2023 offseason. Indy will be fine as long as Anthony Richardson can be accurate with the passes. Even if he's not, he feels like Kyle Schwarber in a sense of he's a bit of a power hitter. He will hit bombs, but then he will swing and miss a lot. Is he a 3-outcome quarterback? Maybe. We'll see. Seattle. Nice debut. Mike McDonald, not bad. Things went pretty well. And despite giving up the 2 safeties, Seattle played a pretty solid game. Their defense was opportunistic. Their running game was efficient. Their high-end receiving core was very solid as well. Geno Smith played well. A very solid debut. Maybe we're not giving Seattle enough credit when it comes to the NFC West. They do got to beat the Niners at some point in life, though. Pittsburgh, the Steeler way. Only the Steelers, and I guess the Bears too, can win this game without scoring a touchdown or, for that matter, really getting all that close to the end zone. Like Caleb Williams, Justin Fields basically got an A because he was a part of the group project. Not that he really did too much. Chris Boswell did the scoring, and then TJ Watt did the God mode, and the Steelers handled business in what effectively turned into a home game in Atlanta. Falcons, you cannot allow that. Even though the Steelers fans travel amazingly well. Green Bay, pain. That could not have gone worse. You guys botched opportunities early, and they completely came back to bite you in spades. Never mind the whole Saquon Barkley dominating you thing. Barkley's like that. Never mind A.J. Brown getting that long touchdown to start the second half. He's like that. But botching those short fields with turnovers that you guys caused was something that we really should have known was going to come back and bite you, and it absolutely did. The Jordan Love injury at the end was unplanned, unforeseen, and unfortunate. And now he's probably out for a couple of weeks, and Green Bay's chances of getting any sort of home field or possibly having a high seed in the NFC playoffs might have just ended with that MCL sprain. Yikes. Pain. Tampa Bay. Baker and Evans. These two guys cooked. Baker threw 4 touchdowns. Evans caught 2 of them. Mike Evans, once again, is going to have a gold jacket in a few years. Chris Godwin also caught a touchdown. And the Bucs looked incredibly efficient. Their young pass rushers ate, and they dominated Jalen Daniels in his rookie debut. Tampa Bay looks decent, and they are not going to give up the NFC South without a fight. And to be honest, if Atlanta is going to underachieve again, the fight might be really easy for them. LA Rams. So many injuries. Yikes. This was a rough week for the Rams. The offensive line injuries, because now they have Noteboom out for a while. Steve Avila's out for a while. I drafted Puka Nacua in my fantasy league with my first pick. I had the 10th pick overall. And now he's out for a month and probably longer than that. It was a brutal week for the Rams. Never mind the overtime loss. There's no shame in that. It's just, that was an ugly week of injuries against the Lions. And now, beat up, and they're going to have to regroup pretty quickly after a semi-short week. It's not a full short week, but a semi-short week. And Buffalo. Survive and advance. That was not great. It was ugly for, I'll say, 2.5 quarters. And then Josh Allen came out the booth like he was Superman and did what Superman's supposed to do. Even with all of that, they probably still lose if Kyler Murray can see Marvin Harrison is covered by nobody across the United States border. The nearest person seemed to be in Niagara Falls on the Canadian side. Anyway, Buffalo escapes. They keep it pushing, and they've got a huge game coming up. Now to the DC Metro title tier. I think Washington, D.C. does an excellent job with their train service. It's clean, it's efficient, it's massive, it's all over the place. There are so many different lines, and you can easily navigate your way through all of them if you're really good at directions and know where you're going. Even as an outsider, I found my way easily through Washington, D.C., wherever I needed to, just by following the maps and following the directions. I think they do an excellent job in Washington, and I think a lot of other cities can really learn from what they do. Anyway, now to the title tier. Dallas. Cost yourself money. Now, yes, you did a good job in getting CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott paid. You had to pay the top of the market money because you waited till pretty much everybody who was in their peer group looking for new contracts got paid first. You could have beaten Detroit and Amon-Ra St. Brown to the punch. You could have beaten Minnesota and Justin Jefferson to the punch. You could have beaten Miami and Tyreek and Jalen Waddle to the punch. You could have beaten the Niners and Brandon Ayuk to the punch, and you chose to do none of these things. At least you beat the Bengals, who are kind of the bizarro Jerry Jones sense of spending money, and I expect them to do the most Bengals thing ever in a few months, but we're not talking about them right now. What we are talking about is how Dallas could have spent a whole lot less money on Dak Prescott as well had they beaten the Dolphins and Tua to the punch, or the Packers and Jordan Love to the punch, or the Lions and Jared Goff to the punch, or the Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence to the punch. And they ended up paying him top dollar money and the most guaranteed money in NFL history. But at least the guy that is now second in that guaranteed money market is nowhere near as good as the guy who superseded him. Dak Prescott and the Cowboys were really good on Sunday at the very least, and the Cowboys are 1-0 in a very dominant fashion. Let's see if they can keep it going against another team that was impressive in week number 1. Philadelphia. Sloppy, but successful. Jalen Hurts had 3 turnovers and probably should have had 5 or 6. One of the ones he didn't have probably should have went back to the crib, thanks to a pick 6 that was dropped. But the Eagles' high-end talent carried the day anyway. Saquon was excellent in his debut and as advertised. A.J. Brown handled business as he continues to do. He's a top 10 receiver. He's supposed to do that. The defense, though sluggish at times, though overwhelmed at times by the Packers' depth of wide receiver, were able to get it done thanks to some really key plays by Reed Blankenship, who I'm telling you guys is going to be a star, and by some good coverage by Quinion Mitchell, some solid coverage by Darius Slay, and a pass rush that was better late than never, but they got there and arrived at the end. Also, running up the middle against the Eagles' D tackles from Georgia is a terrible idea. I do not recommend it unless your offensive line is like that. Green Bay's kind of isn't, and they paid the price by running up the gut most times. Anyway, the Eagles escaped, and I think they've learned some lessons about how sloppy you cannot be in this league, at least against the good teams. Miami, a wild day. From Calais Campbell and Tyreek Hill getting handcuffed 3 hours before game time to the game itself, where Miami, it felt like the entire team was emotionally drained from that incident, to then the second half happens and Tua's pep talk happens, and all of a sudden all of the Dolphins start to play really, really well. The Dolphins find a way to win, and it wasn't just the traditional flashy way that they've been doing under the Mike McDaniel umbrella and era. It was some grinded out physical run style, the Mike McDaniel that we've been built to see, that he came from San Francisco with. It was Jeff Wilson and Alec Ingold, not necessarily Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane. It was, yes, Tyreek and Jalen Waddle, but it was also just efficient play on both sides of the ball. The defense got it done. Jalen Phillips and Emmanuel Ogbah with clutch sacks at the end of the game. It was just a really good, solid, efficient Miami win, and it begs the following question. Has Miami learned how to truly win street fights as well as street races? Only time will tell. Baltimore, Kevin Durant challenge. If only Isaiah Likely's feet were size 10s as opposed to size 12s in terms of shoes. That was probably as agonizing of a loss as you're going to see in week 1. Baltimore played pretty well and also pretty bad at the same time. So many illegal formation penalties. Lamar Jackson was excellent, yet at the same time, it felt like he ran way too much. Why Derrick Henry didn't get more carries is a bit baffling. Isaiah Likely was excellent aside from the end of the game. Mark Andrews wasn't really around to ball out during the game, which is kind of weird. You expect that from Mark Andrews. I think the Ravens are going to be fine, but I also think they're going to regret not winning this game at the very end. And I absolutely think they would have gone for 2, and it probably would have been an option play, where Lamar takes it and runs it in, or Derrick Henry takes it. Either way, I think if the Ravens are able to go for 2, I feel like they're going to probably win that game as long as they don't throw the ball. Houston, Stroud MVP tour. Yes, I believe Josh Allen's going to win MVP, but CJ Stroud's going to put up a tremendous fight for it. He had to battle Anthony Richardson on Sunday, and I think there's going to be more battles to come over the next 10 years between those two quarterbacks, and I think Stroud played a really good game. He had a bad NO during it, but he played a pretty good game otherwise. He's got a lot of weaponry, CJ Stroud does. I don't love the Texan defense, but I trust it enough to get stops when they absolutely have to. Good win by Houston. Detroit, they're like that. You can say Super Bowl and Detroit in the same sentence, and it's not a joke, and you don't have to look around for thunder and lightning, and you're not walking under a ladder, even though this Friday is Friday the 13th. I do not recommend it. The Lions are a legit real contender. That offensive line is probably the best in football. Their skill position guys are really good, especially if Jameson Williams finally can break out. The running back combination is really good and really physical and really fast. Jared Goff knows what he's doing, especially in a dome. Though I don't love the defense. At least they came around. Marcus Davenport played well, and that should take a whole lot of attention off Aiden Hutchinson. This is a team that is very serious. Also, Alec Anzalone played like his hair was on fire. That was a really good performance by the Lions on Sunday. San Francisco, well-played scheme. So let me get this right. They decided to activate CMC probably about 2 hours before the game. Yet Jordan Morgan realized he was going to play on Friday and going to start on Friday. And he probably realized once he said it that he said the quiet part out loud and dry snitched on himself. Morgan at least played really well. He was outstanding. Almost ran for $150, and this was a masterclass by Kyle Shanahan against his former disciple in Robert Saleh. This was an excellent performance by the Niners, who, even not at full strength, played tremendously well. And effectively after the first quarter, it never felt like the Jets had a shot. It's got to be demoralizing for the Jets. If there's any one thing I want to say is a weakness, the pass rush not getting home as much is a bit disappointing, but San Francisco's going to make up for that, I'm sure. And Kansas City. Thanks, Buffalo. Yes, Buffalo was responsible for trading the Chiefs the rights to get Patrick Mahomes in 2017. I was there at that draft. It was quite a scene. Sure, you got Trey White. Trey White turned into a really good corner until injuries got to him. And then this past April, you traded the rights to Xavier Worthy. The one thing that Kansas City needed was a V12 engine, and they got one in Worthy. Worthy's the fastest player to come out in the draft. He touched the ball 3 times in the last game and scored twice. Kansas City needed a home run hitter. They found one. Thanks, Buffalo, for allowing them to do it. Now, I'm going to do this a little bit differently. I would normally put 2 games in each tier and talk about the games in question that I am most interested in. I'm going to put them at the end this time and see where we go. First, the zombie tier games. Jets and Titans. The Jets' second game in a 19-day span, they had 3 of them in 19 days, takes them to Nashville. And against a Tennessee team that also looked incredibly sluggish in week 1. For the Titans, I wonder, can they cause pressure where the Niners could not? Simmons is an excellent defensive tackle, and can he get through that offensive line that the Jets have? Meanwhile, the Titans receiving core versus the Jets secondary is something I am very interested in seeing. I'm also interested in seeing which is more likely. Will Levis touchdown passes or interceptions? The Titans are going to lead a whole lot more of the former than the latter to win this game. And Giants versus Commanders. Now, both these teams looked awful. In the Giants' case, maybe only Carolina was worse. In the Commanders' case, probably only Carolina and the Giants were worse. These 2 teams were awful last week. If there's one thing I've learned about Giants Commanders over the last few years, Daniel Jones actually played pretty well against Washington. Now, granted, some of that is Saquon Barkley aided, but Daniel Jones has generally played pretty well against the Commanders. Can he do that this time without Saquon Barkley? Most people would argue no. Anyway, let's get to the monkey paw tier games. Saints and Cowboys. Like I said for New Orleans, what are you? Are you good, or are you a product of what Carolina is, which is hideously bad? And in the case of Dallas, are you great, or are you a product of a sneaky awful team in the Browns who roughly didn't show up last week? Yet another Tom Brady Cowboys game. I think some people will love that, other people will hate that, but in any event, will Tom Brady see the Cowboys win another game under his watch? Or will New Orleans prove that they're not just a product of playing a terrible Panther team? Then there's Bears-Texans, where Chicago played awful on offense, excellent on defense, and got it done. Meanwhile, Houston played pretty well and balanced on offense and ineffective on defense, but really they were just a victim of home runs hit by Anthony Richardson. Anyway, I'm so looking forward to seeing Montez Sweat versus Laremy Tunsil. Can Tunsil keep Sweat away from Stroud? Can the Texans offense score on the Bears defense like they need to? That's something I'm also looking forward to seeing. And what has Caleb Williams learned from last week? Now that I'm sure he's realized, oh, this is not USC, you're not playing Arizona State in the Pac-12. He's going to have to be a whole lot better to get this win in Houston than he was last week. To the playoff tier games. Rams and Cardinals. And what intrigues me about this Cardinals game with LA is that the Rams are so banged up and so beaten up and are facing an Arizona team that I truly think is going to win a couple of these games. Now that Kyler Murray doesn't have to worry about Aaron Donald chasing him, and quite honestly, I don't blame him for being terrified of Aaron Donald, because Aaron Donald's like that. Can Kyler take advantage against a Rams secondary that got cooked quite a bit by Jared Goff and company? Can the Rams continue their ownage of the Cardinals? Because over the last few years, LA has dominated Arizona. It'll be a fun game to watch. And of course, Joe Burrow versus Pat Mahomes. It's Bengals and Chiefs. And a game that Cincinnati would love to win in the worst possible way. And in a game that Kansas City expects to win because, of course, they should. Romo and Nance, I'm sure, will be on the call in Arrowhead. And this is going to be a fun game because Cincinnati will get up for this game more than even some of their divisional games, quite honestly. And then we get to the title tier games. Bucks and Lions, rematch of a divisional round game. And this feels like a game where if Tampa Bay wins, I'm probably putting them in title tier next week. This Bucks team looks very solid, very potent, and there aren't too many deficiencies, except for what may be the secondary due to a bunch of injuries that happened in week 1. That could be a problem against a Lions team that knows how to cook at home. And Jared Goff can get busy against most secondaries when they're full. Tampa Bay's probably won't be. I'm also looking forward to seeing Tampa's young pass rushers against the brick wall that is Detroit's offensive line. Can they get through and then get to Goff? That's a major question that I need answered. And of course, Buffalo and Miami, which will start the week. This is a game where the Dolphins absolutely have to have and have to win. Why? I don't think Buffalo's roster is going to be weaker than it is right now in the Josh Allen era, as long as he's around. Where else on this roster, except for tight end and obviously Allen, are you going to take a Bills unit and the offensive line? Or are you going to take the Bills unit over the Dolphins unit? When both are at full strength, I can't think of one. Maybe the linebackers, because Matt Milano's like that. His loss is going to, I think, be felt if Miami is able to be physical once again with their run game. And the secondary issues that Buffalo is going to have, especially without Taron Johnson in the middle, in the slot, one of the better nickel corners in the league. Can Miami exploit that? And does Miami have enough bodies over the middle that can exploit such a thing? This is a monster game to start Thursday Night Football, where the Dolphins are going to have most every advantage you can possibly have, except for the fact that it's on Thursday night as opposed to Sunday afternoon. It's a vital game in the AFC East, and if anyone is going to want to take the division from Buffalo, you're going to have to beat them at least once. So, as you can hear, that is the end of this train of thought. That was the final stop. The next trains of thought will be in pic form later today on the Sports Lounge page, and obviously in video form like this on Tuesday when I do the Week 2 Railway Path video. The Bills-Dolphins game will be the first stop on those trains of thought.